The film begins with a man named Jake being released from prison after spending 7 entire years in solitary confinement. 2 years later, Jake and his brother Billy visit a casino that belongs to a man named Masha. Jake believes Masha owes him because he was the reason Jake was imprisoned. Masha invites them to a special table upstairs. Jake has to take the elevator, where it is revealed that the time he spent in solitary confinement gave him claustrophobia. Jake soon sits on a table with Masha and his guests. He makes a bet with one of Masha's guests, but loses. Now, he wants to make a bet with Masha, whom he has tricked to believe that will win over Jake. However, Masha loses the hand, and Jake is about to walk out from the casino with a bag full of money. On his way out, he is stopped by a man who says he knows Jake has problems, but he can help. While leaving, Jake prefers to take the stairs, but collapses as soon as he walks outside. While falling, he realizes the random guy who talked to him has sneaked a card into his pocket, which prompts him to take the stairs. Jake is taken to the hospital, where the doctors tell him they are not sure what's happening to him, but they will run some more blood tests. When he returns to his house, he finds a card on the ground that prompts him to pick it up. Jake does so, and his life is practically saved as an assassin sent by an infuriated Masha shoots at him. The mysterious man from earlier, Zach, saves Jake and takes him to meet his friend Avi. Avi somehow has acquired Jake's medical file, which states that he is suffering from a rare blood disease. He will be dead in 3 days. The two men offer him their protection in exchange for all his money and his blind obedience. Jake does not like the deal, but he pays a visit to his doctor, who confirms what Avi said. In the meantime, Masha meets with his assassin, Sorter, and wonders why he missed his shots even though he never misses. Sorter replies this time he made the mistake of allowing his emotions to interfere because he had a bad feeling. As for Jake, he returns back to the two men and agrees to work for them. Avi reveals that they are loan sharks and takes Jake straight to a potential client for a meeting. On their way to the next one, Avi asks Jake what is his story with Masha. Jake narrates that he used to work for Masha. At some point, the big boss forced him to take part in a game, but his guests started making fun of him. Back then, he did not take any of that, so he shot one of the guests and chaos broke loose. Jake was arrested and interrogated by the police, but he refused to reveal who was the authority that organized these illegal games, so he ended up in prison. In the meantime, Masha has a meeting with a lady named Lily Walker. She has been sent by a guy named Gold, who seems to be the biggest player in the Underworld. Masha and Gold are going to work together real soon, and Walker warns the former to not disappoint Gold, or he will regret it. Later, Avi and Zach invite Jake to have a seat, and they ask him about his prison time. Specifically, they are interested in who he spent his time with. Jake starts narrating that when he was taken in prison, he was given 2 choices, either serve 14 years or 7 years in solitary confinement. He chose the second option. Soon, 2 other prisoners got transferred in the cells next to him on each side. They were super clever. One of them was a chess grandmaster, while the other was a con artist. They used to communicate with Jake by using books from the library and writing chess moves on them. The 2 of them came up with a method of winning at everything, which they called the formula. They shared the formula with Jake, and then one day, they just escaped. When Jake was released from prison, he realized that they had stolen all of his money because they knew everything about him. The only thing they left for him was a note which read, "The only way to become smarter is to play with a smarter opponent." After that, Jake started actually using the formula, and he won. In fact, he won so much that many casinos blacklisted him. Jake continues working for the 2 men even though he would love to take a break. One night, he meets with them while they are stealing an old safe from one of Mock's locations. However, that old safe is not empty at all, as it contains gold drugs. That incident means very bad news for Masha, who finds himself in a difficult situation. He sends his trusted man, Paul, to buy that same amount of drugs from the Chinese, but they want to sell to them for double the market price. Paul returns back to Masha to inform him about the offer, believing the price is too high. Although Paul is right, Masha is afraid to deal with Gold, and believes the price will be covered in the long run by working with Gold. So he tells Paul to make the purchase. Paul sets up a trade with the Chinese in a hotel, but Zach and Avi have other plans for both sides. They want to make Masha's life a hell. They get access to a central room and use it as their base of operations. They use sleeping gas on both sides, and then make their move. First, they steal the money from Masha's men, then they steal the drugs from the Chinese. Later that night, Avi plays a game of chess with Jake, who always wins. He asks Jake how he is able to always win, and the latter starts explaining his strategy, which basically boils down to making your opponent think they are in control. After they have made the wrong assumptions, one should be able to defeat their enemy. The next morning, Jake receives a phone call from his brother Billy, who tells him that a mysterious man met him and advised him to call. He said Jake needs to stay away from the men he is working for. After terminating the call, Jake meets with Zach and Avi, who are now threatening two men because they owe them some money from their loans. They want Jake to shoot one of the men, but Jake turns against them. However, they have seen it coming, and Jake realizes the gun is empty when he tries to shoot Avi. Avi knocks him unconscious, and Jake wakes up in his house. Avi gives him a call, saying that Jake needs to have a checkup because his 3 days are up. Jake visits his doctor and is now told that there was some kind of a mix-up. Jake is not totally healthy, but he is certainly not going to die. Meanwhile, Paul has found out that Jake is working with these two loan sharks. When he tells Masha about it, they assume Jake might be the mastermind behind the stolen drugs. There is no doubt that he would do anything to get his revenge on Masha. With that in mind, Masha sends a bunch of his men after Jake. When they find him, one of Masha's men runs after him, but he ends up shooting himself by accident. Later, the other men return back to Masha while he is eating in a restaurant. One of his men tells him a fake story, that the other guy was killed by Jake. At the same time, a female assassin sent by the Chinese wanders around the restaurant looking for the perfect shot on Masha. However, Sorter spots her and shoots her without being seen. Her blood is spread on Masha's face, and now his men push him on the ground in order to protect him. Nobody has figured out what just happened, and they just hold Masha on the floor. Sorter walks out of the restaurant, but the female assassin is not dead. She starts moving and aims her pistol at Masha. Masha sees her, but he can't get up because his guy is holding him down. Injured as she is, the female assassin tries to shoot at Masha. She misses a couple of shots, but one of the bullets hits Masha's pinky fingers and cuts it. Masha grabs a pistol from one of his men and kills the assassin, while at the same time, Sorter sees the assassin's driver trying to escape with his car, ending up killing him. After that incident, Masha wants all of his men to go full throttle into finding his drugs. Sorter takes action first and breaks into a secret club where he kills some Chinese henchmen. Then he orchestrates a sophisticated hit. He has access to the cameras, so he drills a hole through the wall to slightly fit the weapon in. Then, while he observes the Chinese boss's movements through the cameras, he takes the perfect shot when the time is right. In the meantime, Jake meets with Zach and Avi, who now play with his mind. In fact, Avi proves he is extremely smart by guessing exactly what Jake is silently thinking about. Eventually, the men end the conversation by advising Jake to change the rules of what he allows to define him. If he does that, then he will be able to put an end to this game. Several nights later, Jake breaks into Masha's room while he is sleeping. He is holding a gun, but can't decide if he should kill him. In his mind, he constantly replays the conversation he had with Avi and Zach. Masha wakes up while Jake has not yet decided what he wants to do. These moments turn into an inner torture for him, as he engages in a constant dialogue with his own mind. Inside his mind, he thinks that he should act tough and kill Masha, but in reality, he kneels in front of him and apologizes for everything he did. Masha is a man that should be feared and respected. Eventually, Jake leaves the room and Masha gets up. He runs to his drawer to grab his gun. In the meantime, Jake decides to enter the elevator despite being claustrophobic. He realizes that one of the things that define a man is his own self. However, he must understand that his self is not him, but rather a summary of the beliefs he has acquired while interacting with life. He engages in a dialogue with his self, who refuses to let him go. No matter what Jake does, his self comes back to haunt him. However, Jake breaks free this time, getting away from everything he was ever afraid of. When he arrives on the bottom floor, Masha waits for him with a gun. Masha wants him to be afraid of him and literally orders Jake to fear him. However, Jake has a big smile on his face and just walks away. The next morning, Masha orders Paul to find Jake, so Paul and a bunch of his men pay a visit to Billy, Jake's brother. After torturing him, Paul finds Billy's daughter and threatens to do the same to her. However, Sorter does not like that, and he kills all the bad guys except one. The little girl is now being held by Masha, while Jake and his bosses visit his casino. Now, Jake puts some clues together and figures out that these two men are the same men that served time in the cells next to his, the ones who came up with the formula. Finally, Jake is invited for a private talk with Masha. Although he is holding the little girl at gunpoint, Jake has infiltrated Masha's mind so deep that the latter believes Jake is going to kill him. Since he would not like to give him that pleasure, he decides to end himself.